So recently I've been trying to improve my lettering. I definitely plan to start inking this as soon as I finish the page. And I kind of have been thinking here that something that I never really worked on well throughout my life has been lettering. And I know there's a lot of different lettering one can do, not just like, I don't know, cursive, calligraphy and all of that, but kind of what I have in mind. And although I don't want to share that yet, I've realized that it's kind of funny because I think back to when I was beginning to learn to draw, and it's really it's kind of weird how I could see the improvement myself. It's really weird because if I had to explain some of the process of like actually drawing with my shoulder, one thing, obviously warming up every day. I've gotten a lot better, and I have had days in which I feel like I could just like continue a piece without having to warm up, but I always like to warm up no matter what. I have another video about what I do to warm up every day, and I have changed it a bit over time, but the bigger point here I'm trying to say is that there's always something new to learn, and it's kind of funny because, when you're drawing, when you first start learning, it's overwhelming because there is too much, but I think after a couple years you realize that you're not going to be good at every single thing, and that may not be your goal. And I feel like even when you do try that, you may be doing doing it the wrong way, or you may be trying to do too much. And it's kind of like you have to focus on smaller things for long periods of time, which is definitely not the most fun thing to do. Because like I feel like with a lot of other things, and I may have said this before, but like math, I feel like if you do a lot of math problems, you get the similar concept to solve it in a good amount of ways. But with drawing, it requires a lot of muscle memory, and perhaps that's what they say about job experience. But I feel like the difference between, well, I don't know, that and drawing is that it requires a lot of muscle memory, and I'm not talking like 2 to 3 years. I'm talking like probably 10 years or more, and that's never a fun thing to say because it's hard to pin down it exactly. I feel like it's more of a lifelong thing rather than trying to pin it down on any type of year amount. The only reason why that gained popularity, I would say, is because people hear of the thing called the 10,000 hour rule. And it's kind of funny that many people bring that up because I read an article, I think it was it Peter Norvig? It was an article about when I wanted to first learn how to program, and basically it talked about, well, there were all of these books that try to claim learn programming in 24 hours, learn programming in a week, learn programming in a month, learn programming in a year. And the thing about that is, I know a lot of programming at this point, but the reality of that situation is that I do not know everything. I've made some applications that started small that I expanded greatly upon, and I think a lot of that has to do with stepwise refinement. And the thing is, I think the technology has gotten a lot better in which one person can do more, but I also have to keep in mind that sometimes you're a bit limited with what you can do or what you want to do. In general, one of the big issues that I would say you run into is big data, in which you don't own big data. So if you wanted to do something with a lot of data, you're kind of a bit limited there. Granted, that's not really my interest, but like I was more interested in the art aspect of things, and that's always where I tended to go. And I don't want to like talk about that for really long, but when I first started, I had a hard time just grasping the idea of variables and greater functions and fitting stuff into a function. But I feel like you just gain a lot with experience. And a thing that I always try to keep in mind is, in general, when it comes to programming, people say you don't want to repeat your first year like 10 times or more. And that really stuck with me, because I'm always trying to figure out how to improve, not just get stuck in a rut. Granted, practice is always good, but you don't always, you don't want to get stuck in doing just that small subset of practice. You kind of want to expand your skills when you can. But yeah, when it comes to drawing, it's all this muscle memory, all this sheer amount of muscle memory. And probably this, a lot can be said about programming too, but in all honesty, I feel like it's a bit different. I mean, I guess everything is different, but yeah, it's like a lot, just a lot of muscle memory. And a lot of people always say, just draw. And people get frustrated at that device because they want to get into the head of the person who was drawing. And people say experience is the best teacher. But I think what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to share a lot of what I do as I go. And granted, I don't always share everything. That's kind of like, I want to say that's kind of like just, okay, so there's feedback, right? When it comes to feedback, there are like many types. I feel like when it comes to practice, a thing that like school could really do is kind of give you feedback when you have coursework. Like there are discrete things that you're trying to do, whether it be like any type of drawing course that has like a solid end in sight. I think the idea behind a lot of that is you being able to see your mistakes. And the problem, not the problem, but the thing about that is, I think a lot of artists are kind of just on their own, in which if you do ask for feedback more often than not, I think you have to pay someone to look at it. And even with that, if you pay 10 different people, they may give you 10 different answers. I think that just doing a lot of it again and again and again, trying to learn from your mistakes, trying to do what you can, I think that's incredibly important. Sometimes I feel like drawing with my wrist is completely different than drawing with my shoulder. Like, I feel like they're kind of two different things. And sometimes you may even just draw with your arm instead of just drawing with your wrist or shoulder. And there's so much to it. And I think there are artists who have gone their entire life thinking that they are still not at the point they want to go, or they want to be at. But sometimes I can tell that I'm not at the point of being able to produce stuff at a rate I want to. I feel like with programming or with anything, especially drawing, you can get a feel for what you can do in a day. And I think that does increase over time. Because like when I first started programming, I mean, I struggle with really basic things. I mean, granted, you even have like your editor that can kind of help point out mistakes as you go, or maybe you don't use an editor. I had friends that would just use command line to do C, but that was it was interesting. But I mean, like, if you ever try to do larger pieces, I mean, can you imagine trying to do a really big piece, but if you don't do it and one day it just all goes away? I mean, maybe you could save it and write it to a file. Sorry, I'm going on a tangent there, but what I'm trying to say here is that there's always something new to do. Don't beat yourself up if you're not good at something, but like if you just spend, like, if you have some drawing experience and then you try to really focus on it and try to do more of it and more of it, probably over the course of a week or even a month of doing it, you'll get a lot better. There's just things that take time, and I think that you really learn that as you go. I mean, I guess you'll never know everything, and maybe that's for the best, because, there are probably things that you do not really want to draw. I wish I had an example that I could think of something that I would not want to draw. I know that sounds weird, but I can't believe I can't even think of an example. Something, but to put blank whatever you could think of. But yeah, the thing about the other thing about that is a lot of what I do. I'm probably very early in my art career. I've noticed a lot of other YouTubers, and even just artists online who I do like. Many of them make it really difficult for you to find a way to contact them you could always comment on a video or something like that, which is probably a big reason why many people make it difficult for you to contact them. But I think a lot of them, like, not to, how do I best put this? So I've noticed this weird thing on YouTube in which sometimes you'll see artists who they act like this is their first time drawing in any capacity, and they only have like a very small amount of YouTube videos on their channel, and it's like they're showing an incredible amount of progress in a really short period of time. And I just want to say that I feel like people see that and they think that, and they may even give up because they're not seeing that huge amount of progress. I want to put this out there that you have to be really careful with YouTube and the internet in general because people could lie. And I don't mean that in like a nefarious way, but I feel like a lot of people do that because it really does attract attention. I feel like many people do have previous experience and they're kind of just going. I mean, I have no doubt there are people out there who could have explosive growth when it comes to drawing experience, but I feel like there are other creators that like it takes longer than that. Like it may take a year to see some progress or longer, and you'll see it. And the other thing you kind of have to keep in mind is that many people are in different parts of their life. Like if you do not work and you have all the time in the world to draw, I don't mean to say it like that. I'm just saying that like, well, you get the point. If I had to give an example, I wanted to draw throughout my entire life, but I put off a lot of it because I focused on school. And I had to study, and and pretty much when I entered the job place, I saw the hellish landscape that it could be, and it really wanted me to, it really made me want to just draw more. But the thing is, and I talked about this before, in which I was originally waking up early, about 4:30 a.m., 5 a.m. every day so I could draw first thing in the morning. Because by the time I came back home from my job, I would usually exercise, eat, and then I would just be too tired to really do anything. And it wasn't really until the pandemic that I had more time because I didn't have to commute. And basically, when I would commute, it would take me about an hour and a half to get to work and an hour and a half to get home. Some days there were worse than others because I would have to stay late and then the bus wouldn't come for even longer. Or like, I would just miss the bus, so I'd have to wait a whole nother hour. So I would spend anywhere from 3 to 3.5 hours commuting. And I have to say, I feel like a lot of people are not in a good life situation when it comes to that. I mean, like, I can't afford a house. I can't afford it's what I can do. But if you want to live close to where you live, or sorry, where you work, you sometimes have to pay a lot of money, and sometimes it's not always that possible to do. So I feel like there's a lot of it depends. Like everyone kind of thinks that they have the same life situation, but I think it is important to understand that that is not always the case. And I know that's I don't think that's like a controversial topic, because I don't like to talk, I don't like to talk about other people, but you'll just see throughout YouTube in which there are some people that, they have explosive growth, or maybe it's because they have more time, maybe it's because they are that good, maybe it's because they're not being 100% truthful with the previous experience they have. There's a lot of things. Some people do not have to worry about having a job, and I've worked with and I've met many of those people. I am not one of them, but it's really bizarre. But yeah, there are people who do not have to work, they get to work. But the thing I'm trying to say here is that it takes a long time to get good, and do what you can. I think that's really the big takeaway that I've always been thinking about. Just do what you can, and I think that'll see you far. But yeah, I think another issue, like motor control, I really lacked motor control for about, I would say, until 2023, that I first started to be able to get better motor control with drawing. And I feel like that really mattered a lot, because I feel like whenever I tried to draw, I would always get the lines wrong. And I will say, a weird habit that I had been trying to break was undoing, like, Control Z. It's kind of funny because one day I was actually drawing on paper and I made a mistake, and I instinctively had my hand reach for Control Z for me to touch air. I was like, what is going on? So I think there are bad habits, but I will say, when I was doing digital drawing, one habit that I feel like served me well was turning off the, what do they call it, the smoothing algorithms. Because I feel like if you have smoothing algorithms, they could sometimes hide up your lack of line control. But, yeah, the thing, I hope a lot of these words have been a bit encouraging. I feel like it's really hard to get feedback, to get people to tell you what to do, and more often than not, you kind of have to pay for it. But yeah, I think the other thing is many YouTubers and artists do not want to be contacted. I feel like, I mean, I kind of understand it. Sometimes people don't want to be sometimes people don't want to be contacted. Sometimes people are doing it for marketing purposes, and sometimes, like, they don't want to have to deal with an influx of emails. I get a lot of spam, and I do attribute that to me putting my email out there. And it's like, I don't know, people sign me up for lists, and it's like, I see my email and I'm like, wow, there's so much junk mail in here. And it's, and ironically, it's a lot of people asking if they want me to, or if they want to make a website for me or something like that. But oh well. Yeah, I hope this video was a little bit encouraging to you. But yeah, if you do have any questions, I always do try to answer what I can. Sometimes there are people that, I don't know, they leave bizarre comments. I think sometimes it's spam. That has been another thing, because I feel like YouTube does have a bit of a spam problem, and other times they're legitimate. But I think the YouTube filter has gotten a little bit better with the robot stuff. I don't know why. I don't know. There's probably a reason for why people make robots to do that. But yeah, I think I'm always happy to kind of make these videos. I sometimes feel more encouraged the longer I draw. And when I say that, it's like every year that I could kind of see my improvement, it kind of like gets me to be really, like, I've been really excited. Like, these past 2 years, once I finally got over this motor control issue, and like I feel like I have a much better quality and control over my lines, I feel a lot more encouraged, and I feel like it kind of caused this snowball effect. And I really think that, like, the information overload can be very discouraging to new people. Like, heck, if you look at YouTube, if you look at videos, people will say, if you're learning to draw with beginner, these tips will, and it's such a marketing ploy, and I just feel really bad for people, because I feel like a lot of artists have way too much experience. There may be a bit of a difference between, like, even a teacher. I mean, I don't know. I feel like no one really knows what they're doing. I feel like that's the honest truth. I feel like the honest truth is, like, everyone's just trying. No one really knows. No one really knows. And they just go with it. And maybe that's all you can do. Not that that's a bad thing, but yeah, I hope I hope this has been a bit insightful, because this is going on year 6. And I mean, I plan to do it forever. I mean, it's one of those things that's become such an important part of my life. And it's kind of weird how I always gauge what I do against my programming experience. And I mean, I probably had a lot more time for my programming experience, because like when I was in college, I had the summers off and I would do nothing but study programming stuff. But man, if I would critique myself then, it took me a long time to get to the point of being able to make full desktop applications and more. It took so much time, and it was like I mean, having a job also helps. I don't mean to say it like that. I mean, it's just because like jobs these days are such a shitstorm of having to maintain an unbelievable amount of garbage that I mean, I get it done. I get my job done, but it's so much. It's like I'm not sure the best way to say it. It's like a monster. It's like a monster that's like right behind you, and you're like, just I don't know, just get me already. No, I'm just joking. But yeah, I think do what you can. Do what you can, and I think that'll help. But yeah, I hope this video was a little bit helpful. I feel like the more of an experienced artist you become, the more it becomes difficult to share what you know, because it's so internalized, you can't explain it. And you will see, if you do watch any of my other videos, granted, they may be a bit like, you'll have to just go through all of my videos. I don't mean to say it like that, but I do try to share what I'm thinking, what I'm doing, how it feels. And sometimes I try to pinpoint past years to how I did feel. There was another YouTube channel of like someone trying to put in like a certain amount of hours, and I could be wrong here, but it kind of seemed like they had a lot more experience. And the other thing is, when I make my videos, I intentionally do not, like, I don't really make high quality budget videos. And I know that sounds weird, but I try to do that because I'm trying to be as raw as possible. And I feel like with a lot of other YouTube channels, like, either they're paying someone to do the high budget quality that they have, or they have past experience doing it. And in general, I could probably figure it out how to do that, but I'll be honest with you, I feel like the raw stuff is a little better. I mean, I feel like it's real, and I think that's what I should be sharing with people, instead of like just the top of the quality best stuff, because I feel like that could be a bit damaging. And I want to say another thing is, like, art school. I do think, like, I couldn't afford it. I wouldn't have done it because I didn't really have any experience, but I always thought it would be interesting to see what it was like. But I feel like it can give an opportunity for people to really double down and get a lot of practice in. But it's like, the thing about picking a career is really, and I touched upon STEM careers, and I've talked about the lack of art careers, and the encouragement, whether it's family and whether it's society. But the point I'm trying to say here is that I feel like with anything, if you really want to pursue it more, you'll just do things you like with it, and you'll figure it out as you go. Like, no one ever taught me how to make desktop applications that work on Mac, Windows, and Linux. No one taught me how to do any of that. No one taught me the languages that went into that. I mean, I learned general programming stuff, but no one taught me how to make clean, good, organized, reusable components and code. A lot of that stuff I figured out on my own. And the reason why I figured out on my own is because it's dealing with a nightmare. You know, if you don't cross your I's, and I'm going to draw an I here, the letter I. If you don't, cross your I's and something your T's, but if you don't do that, it becomes a monster down the road of maintenance. And sometimes I've worked on projects that have grown so large that there's no time to fix it. It's too big of a monster. The monster is there. Like, sometimes when there's a ball of yarn, is it worth it to untangle all of it so you can start fresh? Do you even have the time to do that? And sometimes in the workplace, you don't have time to do that. In my opinion, there's a thing called, not my opinion, there's a thing called refactoring. And refactoring all has to do with trying to make your code easier, scalable, maintainable. Granted, there's always some limitation of the system, but I have done that, and I've really learned that if there's anything you ever want to maintain, it's always going to be a bit of a struggle and a challenge to get back to it, but you really have to, you really have to make sure what you're doing is a good quality, and that's something I'm really trying to strive to do in my day-to-day for art. And I know that sounds weird, but I guess I look at the world through the eyes of comparing myself to programming. And that's just how I measure myself. I mean, I guess you may have to find a way to do it on your own. I hope I don't talk. I probably talk way too much about programming and whatnot, and I probably, I could go forever on that. There's so much that I know about that, but, there's also too much in that. Like, much like how in drawing, there's, you draw everything from animals to cars. When it comes to programming, I mean, there's too much, and there's Angular and React, and it's like, even if like, I know React, but I mean, like, the problem is it's always either old versions or new versions coming out. Sometimes you don't always work with a database. Sometimes you don't always work with a remote server and database. So it's like, there's too many exceptions to everything. And you just kind of have to figure it out on your own. But yeah. Well, I hope this was interesting, because I feel like I haven't made a video for a little while. And I do try to make them when I can. But yeah, if you do have any questions or like concerns, you could always drop it in the comments. I always do try to answer it, but I always do worry if I ever reach a day in which there is too much to answer. But maybe that's a good thing, so to say. But yeah, I hope this helps. If you have any questions, please ask in the comments. Oh yeah, I guess I'll say the other thing is that you also have to think about your medium. Wherever you have a channel or like a social media, is your medium right for it? And I think that's kind of important. You see, YouTube, like, if I draw, and the thing about that is, if you want to do nothing but show drawing videos that you make, YouTube could be a good option for you. But like, if you just make stuff constantly, you don't always want to be filming yourself of everything you do. You may want to use like some other place where you could post images instead. So it's kind of like a balancing game. But I mean, not a balancing game, but I mean, just trying to figure out what's right for you. I mean, or like whether you want to find a physical community of people. Like, I've been thinking about that for a while. I really don't know why I haven't. But yeah, thanks for listening. I talked way too long. Bye.